recognizing we are all gathering from different lands today. I am joining from the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. I move forward with gratitude for their stewardship and in recognition of the ongoing presence of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities. So the webinar today is being recorded and will be sent out directly to the emails that you registered for today with once it's available. So that can be expected later today or early tomorrow. Our chat is off and will remain off. This is to ensure that folks who are using assistive technologies today can fully access the webinar without interruption. So please do not use the chat or reactions during the webinar, and please keep yourself on mute for the duration of today's webinar. That being said, the Q&A function is on. If we have time at the end of today's webinar, we will move to a question and answer period. Please be mindful and maintain kindness and respect in any of your questions or comments. Thank you. So I'd like to officially welcome everyone to our webinar, Works in Action, Community Connections. I'm Lindsay Glennie. I'm the Communications Associate with the United Church of Canada Foundation, and I'm very excited to be moderating today's discussion. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today. We're really excited to have a really wonderful group of panelists with us today. These inspiring leaders are working hard to create spaces of resource and belonging in their communities. So I am pleased to welcome Jess from Bedford House in Peterborough, Ontario. Growing up, Jess was shaped by two strong influences, a deep respect for collective action and a commitment to justice grounded in faith. Professionally, Jess has spent her career in the nonprofit and post-secondary sectors, working across areas including gender equality, youth homelessness, sexual advocacy, social justice, and experiential learning. Her passion lies in community building and walking alongside groups as they engage in shared learning. Today, Jess's work is grounded in addressing one of the most persistent and often unspoken divides, socioeconomic class. Through her role as the executive director of Bedford House, she focuses on bringing people together across class lines to build relationships, deepen understanding, and co-create spaces rooted in dignity and belonging. Welcome, Jess, and thank you for joining us today. We also have, from another time zone, we have Matt joining from Brunswick Street Mission in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Matt is the Fund Development Director for Brunswick Street Mission. With previous experience in marketing, thrift store development, and nonprofit management, this role was a natural fit for him. Outside of his job, Matt loves to spend time in or on the water, taking photos, and at home with his wife, 4 kids, and 2 dogs. Brunswick Street Mission provides food security and social supports in downtown Halifax. In 2025, it supported over 2,000 neighbors with a food bank, served over 20,000 hot meals at a breakfast, and handled over 3,000 requests for social support. Originally founded under Brunswick Street United Church 100 years ago, it became its own nonprofit in 2009 and remains an incorporated ministry of the United Church. Thank you for joining us today, Matt. And we have Pam joining from London Community Chaplaincy in London, Ontario. Reverend Pam has been working in community outreach ministry for the last 25 years. In her varied roles, she has been responsible for developing outreach programs for children, youth, and families, and she is passionate about engaging others in practical, justice-oriented service activities. Pam is a McMaster grad and also captained their rugby team, and is an ordained pastor with the Canadian Baptists of Ontario and Quebec. She's worked as a community pastor in both Mississauga and London. Pam is currently serving her 10th year as Executive Director and Chaplain at London Community Chaplaincy. The Chaplaincy is a multi-faith ministry that serves low-income families living in social housing in London, Ontario. At the Chaplaincy, Pam is busy wearing many hats, supporting residents with advocacy needs, developing new programs, overseeing staff and students, fundraising, and her favorite, planning parties and celebrations for the residents. On a personal note, Pam and her husband, Chris, a chaplain in long-term care, have lived in London for 17 years and enjoy supporting their 2 daughters, ages 17 and 20, with their varied pursuits. Pam has recently battled non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and is cancer-free, returning from a year of sick leave, and thanks God and all her friends who prayed for her health journey. When she has free time, Pam enjoys a good walk, Netflix binging, theological musings with her friends, and connecting with her neighbors. And if she can fit it in, she's always up for a fun road trip, which, depending on where you are in the country, today is a beautiful day, but it's getting humid. A heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you for joining today to share your experience, passion, and expertise. Let's get to learning. So the first question I'm going to address one by one to each of you, but it's the same question. Could you briefly introduce the project and organization you're representing and share a little bit about your role in it. So Matt, I will ask you first, please.
Sure, yeah. So I'm with Brunswick Street Mission in Halifax. We run a number of programs, a food bank, a breakfast program, laundry services, as well as a free tax clinic and outreach services for our community. Yeah, I think you mentioned we've been there for 100 years. We started as, I think, the North End mission, and that was run through the United Church for a number of years until about 15 years ago. It shifted under a United Church Incorporated ministry itself. So we're still connected with the United Church, but we sort of I don't know exactly how that works, but we're not religiously affiliated. We don't have any connection to a specific religion in that sense, and that allows us to seek funding from other sources that might have some restrictions in that regard. The project that we're talking about is actually from a couple of years ago for us. It's called Healthy Minds Brain Food Friday, and this project was a expansion of something that we had started with a local high school, providing food bundles for high school students who were low income, so that they had some food for the weekends. The local schools have a free lunch program, so. We partnered with an organization within the schools called Schools Plus, who was looking for somebody to help with this issue that they were experiencing and that they noticed with their students. They needed an organization who could put the bundles together and purchase the food, and then they came and they picked them up and then brought them to the school. So it started with a high school, and then this particular project was expanding it to three other schools in the area. And so that allowed us to distribute 85 in total food bundles every week. And then the idea was to run nutrition classes as well. But the point was really to get food into the hands of students who otherwise might not have a healthy food option for the weekend times. So that's a quick introduction.
Thanks so much, Matt. And same question, briefly introduce the project and organization you're representing and share a bit about your role in it. Jess, over to you.
Hello, yes, I'm Jess, and I am here representing Bedford House. We are an organization based in Peterborough, Ontario, Mississauga territory. And Bedford House started as a project in partnership with a local United Church, Greenwood United. So it's a pretty unique beginning in that Greenwood United cross-appointed their minister to be a congregational minister part-time and then part-time director of this organization. And then eventually it kind of grew and it was incorporated as a nonprofit. Bedford House, the goal for us is focusing on small group learning, and particularly in areas of class. And so we bring together people intentionally with different experiences of class. We bring together people with lived experience of poverty, people with lived experience in middle class, to learn about class and to learn about poverty and to connect with one another, to share a meal together. And to learn about relating as humans, and to kind of unlearn a lot as well in the process. And so my role within that is executive director. And as with many nonprofits, we have only one part-time staff, which is myself. And then I also have some facilitators that we hire on to help co-lead programs. But there's a lot of roles I fill, from project management to applying for funds to all the in-betweens, which is delightful. I enjoy it. And the project I'm speaking about today is called Crossing Class Lines, Bridging Team Program. And so this is a program that we've been running for over 8 years. And it's a small group learning program that varies in length. Most recently, we ran it for 12 weeks. So it was 12 weeks. We'd get together 3 hours every week, and we'd start with a meal together. And then we would learn about kind of all the different resources that we all need to live fulfilling lives. And we'd kind of do a lot of unlearning, as I've mentioned, in the process, and just be in a shared learning environment with people that we might not otherwise gather with. And so, that's the project that I'm here to speak about, and I'm delighted to be here with all of you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Jess, and for speaking on that project. And over to you, Pam. Please briefly introduce the project and organization and share a bit about your role.
So I am the executive director and chaplain at the London Community Chaplaincy. And the London Community Chaplaincy actually has been around for 35 years, and the United Church of Canada had a critical and primary role in starting the project. So 35 years ago, in the north end of the city and in the south end of the city, there were groups of people who were getting approached by families who live in social housing to offer more supports for families living in low-income social housing. And so the churches went to the housing provider and said, hey, we're getting requests from our members to come into the neighborhood where they live and to bring some supports together to help, bring some more resources practically into the neighborhoods. Could we have space? And the housing provider 35 years ago said yes. And so in the north end and in the south end, simultaneously, groups of churches bound together and opened up little chaplaincies, which are called the Southdale Chaplaincy in the south and the Limberlost Chaplaincy in the north. And then over the years involved, and in 2013, they amalgamated and became one organization because they're basically doing the same thing called the London Community Chaplaincy. And there were, particularly in the South End, maybe 10 founding churches, seven of which were United Churches. And the United Church of Canada continues to be a prime source of practical donations, financial support, and volunteers, really owning that as part of their local community outreach and mission for their local church. So local churches might collect mittens, they might collect boxes of cereal, they might collect bus tickets, they might help drive kids to summer camp, they might come in and help run an ice cream sundae party or a special event at Christmas. And so there's lots of practical acts of services that the churches come in and lead. So the organization is small in staff. We have probably three full-time employees, myself, a child and youth manager, two and a half really, and then an administrator who does some support with all kinds of pragmatic things. And so we rely on volunteers. We have 60 core volunteers at any one time doing the work and running programs with us, as well as student placement. So our vision and mission is really around empowering children and youth to break the cycles of poverty. But to do that, you need to support the whole family. And so 30% of our energy and our resources goes to building resources and supports for families in need who very often feel very isolated and have very little community support, very little village, we would say, in terms of external family support or friends with stability that can help them in a crisis. And so we provide basic needs resources, a food bank, bus tickets, rides to the food bank, practical support with advocacy with the Children's Aid or with their housing provider or with the school system or healthcare as they need it. So that's a little bit about us and what we do. And I'm happy to share and really thank the United Church of Canada because it is, I always say, not my mission, it is your mission. And I get to be blessed to be at the front of it. And we try and bring as many people, volunteers from the churches in to be blessed too, because it is definitely a blessing to serve in this place.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Pam, for sharing. The next question is once again to each of you, and I will start with Matt. The inspiration behind the project you're speaking of today, and each of you have touched on this, but what needs in your particular communities were you wanting to address?
Yeah, the need we were focused on was student hunger. There's a lot of food insecurity in our province. 1 in 4 households are considered food insecure. So we're situated in the north end of Halifax, which means it has a higher percentage of low income families. And the school that we partnered with, actually all the schools were all within our general vicinity. And so it served a lot of those kids, those youth who would be facing a food insecurity crisis.
Thanks, Matt. And same to you, Jess. What needs in your specific community have you been looking to address?
Yeah, so with Bedford House, from the United Church that began this project, I think one of the main goals was, to ask questions about how to widen the circle and how to reach people that weren't making it out to traditional Sunday morning services, and how to, not just kind of provide immediate needs, but also build meaningful community with those folks. And the kind of backstory of the project, it was started by a United Church minister, as I mentioned, and then also in partnership with his wife, who's also a minister. And she had firsthand experience living in poverty as an adult, and kind of through that process, learned a lot about what she didn't know, and learned a lot about how a lot of her church friends were middle class and didn't really even know how to begin to help her, with the challenges she was facing. And so through her journey and her path, she gathered a circle of people through recommendation from her minister at the time, and had a circle of people kind of gather around her to help her and to kind of help her set her own goals and figure out, what her own challenges were. And it was kind of in that process of having a circle of people and a small group really deep dive together and help her, that was kind of also the inspiration to realize, sometimes small circles of people can really help by gathering around, and sharing food and laughter, but also wisdom and supports, and along the process, learning together about the challenges of living in poverty.
Thank you so much. And Pam, you also touched on this a little bit, but what was the inspiration behind any of your ongoing projects, and what needs in the community are you addressing?
So I would say the current reality is that what we notice, and particularly I've really noticed this and wanted to try and invest more deeply in this strategically, is that right around grade 9 or 10, the youth get discouraged. So, when you're a low income family or a very poor child or youth, it's easy to make children happy. That's what I say, because you give them a popsicle, a freezy, a sprinkler, and they can have a lot of joy and a lot of hopefulness. But as they age and they start to realize the systemic barriers that they face to overcome some of these challenges, they get discouraged, and it's very, very hard for them to envision a positive future for their life. Most of the children and youth we serve don't have parents who've gone to college or university, almost none, unless they're newcomers. And yet then newcomers face a whole new set of barriers that seem particularly difficult to overcome. And if they were born in Canada, they struggle with not having any role models or success stories in their, immediate circle. And so they think it's impossible to achieve their dream or to change their reality. And so social housing is a good thing, because it's very cheap rent and it allows people to stabilize their lives in a moment of trauma. And yet it also is a very claustrophobic kind of community where so many high needs people in such a densely populated space creates a rhythm of hopelessness, and you're surrounded with trauma and problems all the time. And so really we want to help the children and youth break out of that cycle and believe that they can achieve and do great things. So the current vision and energy and inspiration is really, what can we do to support the family unit and the children and youth to empower them to become leaders in their neighborhoods, to go to college and university, and to dream big for their lives? And what barriers can we smooth or support the destruction of, or bring an axe to, for them, that together we can see them achieve? Because the barriers are high. And I'm always happy to talk one-on-one later about that, because very, very difficult for them to break free. And we tend to assume that if people work hard enough, they can do it. And yet there is a huge reality to that most of us don't understand or even can imagine exists.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. Now we're going to go into the one-on-one questions that are a bit more specific to each of your projects. Matt, what challenges do you experience in your area of Halifax, and what changes have you seen over the years?
Yeah, like Brunswick Street Mission sort of sits in a interesting part of Halifax where low income meets the downtown. So some of the challenges that are presented by where we are located physically is we're in a neighborhood where a home across the street will sell for $1 million or $2. And just up the street is social housing and large apartment complexes. So we have and shelters are just up the street as well. So we're in a very unique little area, little pocket. Our outside the doors on a food bank Tuesday morning. We have people lined up outside the doors, and we have a neighbor just up the road who would sell his house for a few $1 million. So A few years ago, that really kind of hit home to us. We were hosting a temporary shelter. The province was looking for a location to help those who were unhoused have an emergency place to go for the night. And so we were hosting a shelter, and that rose issues in our immediate neighborhood because all of a sudden we had an influx of people who they weren't used to seeing around their homes there every night. So it we love where we are. It's a great spot. It really helps, I think, people understand where things are in Halifax. So speaking on that, like in terms of the social change, I've been in this job for 4 years. I've been in Nova Scotia for five, and Halifax has one of the highest rental rates in all of Canada right now. I've seen housing prices go up. I've seen mortgage or rent rates go up. And a lot of the challenges in our area are presented by the fact that more and more people are coming to our doors for service. Just the other day, our kitchen coordinator was looking at the numbers of people. We keep a calendar, like a daily record calendar of our people who come in for breakfast. And he was looking at the 2021 numbers and noticed that I don't know what date it was, but the number was 30 and it was a record number for us. And now we're I think every day so far this month has been around the 100 person mark for breakfast. So there's definitely some major challenge. This is across the country. This isn't just Halifax. There are definitely major challenges, and Pam touched on this, is work just isn't cutting it anymore. People are not getting paid enough, and it's presenting increased burdens on all of our activities, all of our programs, to meet the gaps that are happening.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Matt. The next question is for Jess. The Crossing Class Lines workshop mentions that it's designed to include and engage people with diverse lived and living experiences. So how do facilitators encourage curiosity instead of judgment when people are encountering experiences very different from their own?
Yeah, I think I think the response to this can kind of build off of I think some things both Matt and Pam were speaking to, which is we're living in times where the divisions are growing, and where middle class is thinning out, and people are kind of being, bumped up or bumped down, and uh, with that divide is kind of also a divide of understanding of people, like you were saying, Pam. Like the complexity of poverty is something that if you haven't lived, I don't think you can understand. And so our workshops are really, intentionally and carefully designed to combine people with very different lived experiences, and to kind of talk about, the systems at play that are making it such that, there are these great and vast inequalities where basic needs are just not being met. And I say kind of carefully because I do think, there's lots of like judgments and misunderstandings and stigmas that could easily just be piled on top of someone different from yourself that has a different lived experience. And so some of the ways that we do that are always making sure there's shared leadership. So our workshops are always co-facilitated with people with lived experience of poverty. And we try and have that at all levels. So on our board, we have people representative that have lived experience of poverty co-leading our workshops. And then our participants are all kind of a split between people with different backgrounds. So that is a really important ingredient. And that's, so that we can create safe enough and courageous learning spaces where people can kind of be honest and talk about things that aren't really talked about. And then, we have a group agreement, which is pretty important, that we all kind of set at the beginning and agree to how we're going to treat each other in the time that we're learning together. And that's a pretty important ingredient as well. And within that, the understanding is that living in poverty is a really vital form of expertise, and we are valuing that as a form of expertise. And within that, understanding that everyone knows their own circumstances best. And so we are not judging, we are not fixing, we're really just listening to one another and learning from one another. And so, yeah, those are kind of a few ingredients I would say to make these workshops try and be, courageous learning spaces for all.
Thank you. I really appreciate the description of it as a courageous learning space because that's absolutely what it is. Pam, you mentioned supports earlier of bus tickets and boxes of cereal, things that may seem like such simple supports. So how can something as basic as reliable transportation impact a family's well-being?
Well, I think what I'd like to kind of communicate is that the families who live in social housing, most of them have acute high needs. And so staying housed, is equally important as being housed. So we talk about housing with supports. Just providing a house alone doesn't necessarily guarantee long-term stability for the family because there's a lot of trauma backgrounds or higher unmet needs that create chaos in a family's life again and again and again, and stressors. And so having reliable food access can stabilize your life in a crisis so that you can pay your rent. So, as an example, one of the things that we do with our food bank that we run on site is that, like, when you go to many social service places, and there's nothing wrong with this, it's just a reality, you can have 10 items. There's a limit. You've gone to the food bank once a month is what you're allowed, and it's just not enough. And so now you still have a crisis because you still can't pay your rent. And so what happens is with our families is they stop paying their rent because they have to feed the kids. And we always say, well, we can't help you with your rent payment, but if we can provide the food or the bus tickets and the transportation to get you to where you need to go, to work, to CAS appointments, so you don't miss these critical things because you just don't have the funds to get there or to feed your family, but then you can pay your rent, you can stay housed. And so, as an example, I had a family once, they were crying outside, and one of the neighbors said, "You should go see the chaplaincy because they can help you in this moment." So the mom came over and we asked her, "What food do you have in the house and what are you missing in order to make it to the next source of income, which might be child tax day or a paycheck day or an OW check day? Because you have some food. What are you missing?" And we weren't saying choose 10 items. We're saying, how can we help you in your specific need in this specific moment, have the resources you need, empower her to make her menu to feed the family for the rest of the month until the paycheck came. And then she was able to write a list of what she was missing, and we were able to, you look through the food pantry we have and match what she needed, have a gift card provided by our church to buy the extra things, whether you're missing ground beef and a piece of ham and milk. Now you have what you need in order to make it to the next pay. Now you can pay your rent so you don't get further down this, spiral of almost homeless again because you can't meet some basic needs. So other examples is like sometimes people just give up going to important critical meetings, which could be a housing tribunal. I had one mom once, one older lady, and she was caring for her grandkids. And I knocked on her door and I'm like, "I think your housing tribunal's today." And she's like, "I'm not going." And I'm like, "Well, if you don't go, you will be homeless." Showing up is the first step. And she's like, "I can't get there. It's too hard." And I'm like, "I'm going to drive you. And so she's like, "Fine, I'll go." And she went. But in her own emotional state with all the things on her plate, it's not we assume like you're lazy, you just didn't go. And it's much more complex than that. And the needs are high, and the goal is to keep people housed. She's still housed today. But if she hadn't had support in that one moment to get to the tribunal, to just show up, she would currently, and her kids would be back in care, and the circle of negative spiraling continues. So, really makes a critical difference. Those practical resources, which our churches excel at providing, and the one-on-one support we're able to provide at the chaplaincy because we know the families and we have access to diverse types of resources, and we can meet the needs specifically as opposed to saying, here's your 5 things you can choose from, which helps. But in our case, we can go one step further and meet it more individualized basis. But not without the support of the churches who provide all those in-kind goods, because it is a huge, huge gift that we're able to provide.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Pam. And on the subject of food, Matt, the Healthy Minds project that you're speaking on today, it went from supporting students in one school when it was first initiated to supporting students across several schools. And I'm also curious, why was it important to include cooking and nutrition classes alongside that food support?
Yeah, the idea was to provide students with a basic understanding of food preparation and in some ways how easy food prep can be. So this project was initiated through another funder the previous year. So that's how we got started with this project. And so through that funding, we were able to provide several nutrition classes with that one school we partnered with. I think we had about 5 classes, and it was arranged through our partner. They brought in the students, and the students would just spend an afternoon in the kitchen with our kitchen coordinator. I think they made I forget what it is now, but it was really good because I had a sample of what they made. I can't think of the name. It's not something I eat normally. But the idea was I think they had pulled in some Mr. Noodles and added it to an Asian meal and then with Asian spices and that sort of thing. And it showed them how easy it is to make a meal, a healthy meal, a meal that provides for them over the weekend and cheap because we all know groceries is ridiculously expensive right now. And so it gives them an opportunity to kind of put their own skills to use, find new skills. They had fun and they got to sit down afterwards and eat together. So it was, yeah, it's about food literacy, which is a key component of food security. So knowing how to make foods on top of having the access to affordable and local foods is all part of the food security component.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Jess, with the bridging conversations, what changes have you seen in participants after they've engaged in conversation and learning?
Yeah, I think the main thing I would highlight, is kind of again maybe building off something that you were saying, Pam, which is that people that have experienced poverty for a number of years, it can be pretty easy to lose hope. Like the whole system is set up to be entrenching this, and once you have an appreciation for that, yeah, hope can be hard to come by. And so that's one of the resources we speak about. Our workshops, like the 12-part workshop, follows a different resource each week, and one of them is hope. And yeah, some of the meaningful conversations that we got to have with workshop participants on the role that hope plays and where they find hope. A few of the quotes I will share from different participants about hope. One person said, "Hope can be a radical act against the state of the world." And I really feel like coming together and learning with others and having other people hear your story and listen to your story when, if you have lived in poverty, you're used to people not listening to your story. You're used to people telling you what you need to do. You're used to people, being prescriptive or, judging you. And so getting to be in a space where you're with other people that are listening to your story and, like sharing understanding with you can be quite transformative for people to get to have that experience. So yeah, I think I would share hope as a pretty big outcome. And then, also we're living in a time where, isolation is pretty high. People are all in their own kind of small world, there's online world. There's all kinds of reasons why isolation is pretty extreme right now. And so a lot of people shared, one of our participants was a young adult, and they shared that their community was like their gaming world online, and they shared that's actually really nourishing for them. But they're like, that you're the only people I see every week, like this group and this workshop that we had for the 3 months. He was like, this is it. Like this is my experience of humans. And so just to realize how people's lives can be quite isolated, and just coming out and getting to talk with others. And with that, also it can mean that, self-esteem can increase by just being around others and seeing, like, overcoming the fear and realizing, oh, okay, I'm humaning, I'm being a human with you, and we're learning together, and you're valuing my opinion. That can also help, help people gain a bit of self-esteem to, face all the challenges that we've all been talking about that can be just in gaining housing or, maintaining it. There's a lot of challenges to overcome. So, yeah, some of these kind of like softer skills, I guess I could say, that people are learning. And then also, I think, from this sense of suffering alone and like having your story of all these things that have happened to you to being able to be in a shared community. And again, these are people that don't, typically have faith communities otherwise. So they don't have a circle of people that are kind of aware of what their stories have been and what their path has been. So, creating community and helping build community with people that don't otherwise have a chance to have their stories heard can be quite powerful. And there's lots of stories of many of our programs where people have kept in long touch with each other, and been long-term friends with people outside of the program. And so that also speaks to kind of the length of the relationships that can grow out of it. And then one last thing we do for practical supports, we do provide a grocery gift card every week for participants living in poverty, which we know is just kind of a supplement because groceries are so expensive, but it does kind of help. People always share that is a way to also just honor their participation and just thank them for coming. So that's kind of one of the practical supports that we provide, as well as the meal, which is often shared that's like one of the healthiest meals that people are getting to have that week, and to share it with others is kind of, it's meaningful to get to have that be a shared experience. So
Great, thank you. And you spoke so much to the theme of today's webinar, the community connections, and the experience of someone having, yes, an online community is wonderful, but actually being able to step into a space where they feel welcome, and you described it earlier as courageous as well. That is wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. Pam, how are you working to make your programming deeply welcoming across differences? You did mention newcomers, people who may have degrees from other countries. So language, income, ability, culture, age, how are you welcoming those differences?
So I think there's it's commitment to continually asking yourself questions and continually willing to adjust, change, and grow, and to create environments that are welcoming before people even arrive. For example, we have a community breakfast every week, and we always have the bacon gets everybody there. They want to come for bacon. So we provide bacon, and we always have turkey bacon, right? We may or may not have particular people from the Arabic countries needing halal food that day, but it is available at our events. And we started this, but then it's to keep asking questions, because it's easy to feel proud of yourself. Like, we ask our donors, please don't send pork, and then you're like, great, we've ticked off that box, we've accomplished what we need to accomplish of being welcoming. And then you're like, wait a second, our community breakfast in the summer only has breakfast that typically North Americans eat. So last summer we were like, what does a Middle Eastern family eat for breakfast? What would the children eat at home if they had the money? And maybe instead of having only Eggos or Cheerios, we also have pita breads and tomatoes, because that's more typically their breakfast. And so we tried to ask hard questions and being continually asking and reflecting on our practices. So, that's another small step. But if a child is used to having pitas for breakfast, then now that can be a choice instead of just, like I said, a bowl of Cheerios, which their parents would not feed them for breakfast, typically speaking. So in our food bank, having diverse resources, our pantries, in the meals we provide, in every community event, there has to be a vegetarian option and a halal option, so that if you do come, you're not like, oh, I would have liked to have fully participated. My presence wasn't even expected here. We expect your presence and we're ready for you, whether you came or not, right? So it's being ready and expecting and hoping before they arrive and you realize, oops, I forgot to have a vegetarian option for the friends. We work hard to celebrate culture. And so we at the Chaplain say spirituality is a source of hope for people. And so we want to celebrate spirituality in its many diverse forms. And so I obviously, in my bio, I said I love parties and celebrations, but it really is one way that we create a welcoming space, that we make a big deal at Christmas and everyone's welcome. We make a big deal at Ramadan and everyone's welcome. Well, I have a new staff member and she celebrates Chinese New Year. So it was a wonderful addition. So now Chinese New Year is on the calendar and we get to include Chinese New Year traditions. When we offer as a chaplaincy cab vouchers to any Christmas service, Easter service, Eid service, Ramadan service, and powwows. If you want to go but you cannot go, these are all forms of spirituality and hope for people, and we will offer rides or cab vouchers to those things. So whether people take us up on it or not, because we're consistently promoting and celebrating and being community together in all of these ways helps to create a diversity of welcome. In terms of age, I had to reflect on this because I think I'm young, but I just turned 51 and I'm not as young as I think. And so I realized, and no one wants to learn this, but no one wants to learn that 25-year-olds do not think you're cool. Right. And so all of the moms that really relate well to me at the chaplaincy are my age, and we have grown together for 10 years, but now we all have teenagers and young adults. And I was realizing a few years ago, like I'm inviting the young moms out to come to this or that with me. Like I think this great event I created is appealing. And they're like, man, like you're my mom. And to be honest, in low-income communities, I'm often the grandma. I'm in the grandma's age. And so I have younger staff. And if I can get my younger staff to come or initiate the event, now we have a whole portfolio of people who are relating to that staff member's age. Because as much as I'm lovely and cool, I am their mother. And they're looking for support from their peer group, and it's to recognize that that what a 50-year-old mother of 17 and 20-year-old wants to do for fun is not the same. Even if I think I know, I probably no longer do. And so, just having a diversity of staff and age and culture and language, and promoting a wide variety of celebrations. These are all little tweaks that can create an environment. We may not get it right, but at least we're trying.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And that resonates with me too. I had a recent realization that I'm not as young or cool as I truly think I am. So thank you for sharing the ways that you're adjusting and identifying and acknowledging that, because not a lot of us want to acknowledge that, either of those pieces. And on to Matt. So what gaps in the system are community organizations increasingly being asked to fill? And some of you have touched on this a little bit, but what are you finding?
Um, yeah, I think we're sort of getting forced into providing the basics for a lot of people who simply can't afford basics anymore. So I mean, in Nova Scotia, our provincial government has just kind of gone through a swath of cuts to a lot of social supports, arts and social services. And though we're not supported by the government at all, so we're not affected in that respect, but the people who rely on those supports are now they don't have them anymore, and so they're gonna end up finding being deeper in poverty or being less resourced than they need to, and then finding their ways to organizations like ours to sort of fill those gaps. Um, it's yeah, it's a challenging thing when um, in the income levels for too many people are just not making life easy, or it's not even about easy, it's about being able to get by day to day. For a lot of people, it's just getting more and more hard. So I think yeah, I think the financial strain that a lot of people are facing is the gap that we need to fill by providing by providing the services that they would otherwise have to pay for. So our food bank, meal programs, even just having free laundry services makes things a little more palatable and easier for people to kind of get through the day to day. But yeah, the strain is growing. I think for all organizations that are in the social service um, segment of society, and trying to bridge the gap for too many people, that the gap's just growing for too many people, and the number of people who that gap is growing for is increasing. So
Thank you for sharing that reality and speaking that into our knowledge. Jess, with the bridging communications, how would you encourage someone to create spaces where people feel ownership of their own stories rather than feeling spoken about?
Yeah, I think a really key ingredient is having shared leadership, and so not just creating programs for people, but engaging people in creating the programs who the programs are kind of targeted and for. And so in this case, our programs are educational and are around poverty. So we make sure that they're always co-led with people who have lived experience of poverty. And I think there's kind of like a tipping point where so you could have one person representing someone living in poverty, but that's just one person and their experience. So I think it's important to kind of be aware that you need more than just that one person and that one voice. In our workshops, we try and recruit participants so we have a balance of people. So there's a diverse range of experience of people that have lived in poverty and can each share their unique experience of living in poverty. And I think that helps allow for more of a richness in the discussion, and less like people feeling like they're tokenized, like the one person that's representing all people that live in poverty. And an example of this, we have one of the co-facilitators from the last round of the program that we ran. They shared like they're a young adult in their 20s, and they were like, one of the last person that led, they had lived experience of poverty, but it was lived experience of poverty from 20 years ago. And I'm living in a different reality in poverty right now. And so my lived experience, and mine's a living experience, I'm presently living in. It's not something that I've kind of come through. So they just kind of helped us understand that, it's really important to have really diverse voices and perspectives in all levels of leadership in order to make sure your programs, are meeting all those needs that you might not know yourself because it's not your lived experience. So, I think that's really essential. I think doing research and knowing about principles for working with people with lived experience of poverty is really important too. We've been working on kind of weaving in and incorporating those into all that we do. And then, I would kind of say that it's almost kind of having this understanding that it's actually kind of cross-cultural communication that's needed between people that have lived in or are living in poverty. There's its own culture and understanding, and then layering onto that other things like race and sexuality and age. It's like there's all these subcultures, and so there's a lot of chances for miscommunication. And so again, just kind of trying to get that richness of perspectives and a variety of people in the room to share together, so that there's less of a chance of kind of judgment, but also stereotyping that can happen when you think one person that lives in poverty and then everyone. So I would and just as Pam said, just keep asking questions, keep asking who's not there, keep learning, and just admitting that it's a messy process. Like learning together is a messy process, and that's sometimes it's in that discomfort that we do learn a lot. And so we in our workshops name that, like, we're probably going to make errors as your facilitators. We're humans, and we welcome your feedback. And this is a process that we're all learning together. That's like some of the joy I think happens in those learning edges of admitting that it can be a bit messy and we're probably going to make mistakes because we are trying to communicate across very different cultures.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jess. And Pam, earlier you spoke of a story where someone had been crying outside and was recommended to go to the chaplaincy to get support. So how do you move from people using a service to people belonging in the community?
So one of the things that we do, we have very limited resources and we don't have, we can't do 25 things. So we have to be very particular with what we do and how we do it. And so we do a couple things monthly to form community, and then that source of friendship and support. It's sort of like a natural overflow in terms of, neighbors sharing together as opposed to an agency sharing resources. So the community sees us as a neighbor, and our volunteers as neighbors. We happen to all be out of this one particular unit in this complex, but that neighbor vibe is what we strive to create. And so we have monthly socials. So we go to the beach together, and it's everybody together going to the beach, and we go apple picking, or we go to a community center for a swim together. So there's a monthly adult social that builds a sense of community. And our large scale seasonal celebrations, we build community. And so our mission as it's defined, um, maybe how it even as it's measured, though that's a tricky thing because everybody wants numbers and statistics, right? To prove your worth and value, you have to say, I have done better than last year. I have more people. I have more success. I have more, this idea that more is bigger or better. And we really push back against that and say we have built friendship and connection and neighborhood vibes together. And so I think that really helps to bridge that gap and to build a sense of community as our primary purpose, as opposed to a service-oriented organization. With there's nothing wrong with that because it's super needed, but it's not really what the chaplaincy is. And I try to keep that value and vision of what is a chaplaincy versus a social service agency. And we are not a social service agency, we are a chaplaincy. And so at root of being a chaplaincy is about community and sharing and growing together. So I don't know if that's a little kind of vague answer, or if that helps. If you want me to refine that a bit, you can let me know.
Oh, that was brilliant. Thank you
Okay.
for sharing that. Yeah, absolutely. And in the interest of time for our speakers, they have somewhat of an awareness of where we're going in the conversation. But just in the interest of time, I'm going to move towards our storytelling and our resource connection and those pieces. So, Matt, how do you help people connect them to resources? Some people will arrive with an immediate need,
Mhm.
and several comments that each of you have made have expressed the intersectionalities of different needs as people move through their community supports. So, how do you get them connected? And feel free to share some stories from your experience, and that would be wonderful.
Yeah, so we through our and this is interesting because I love what Pam was just saying. And actually I love what you're both saying about lived experience, getting that involved and building community. I was just chatting with our volunteer coordinator yesterday. I think we went for a walk and it was like, yeah, like community is so essential. We did like it sometimes it does feel like we're just providing services. Like we all as a staff, we all know we're a small staff, but we all know the people that are coming to our doors in one capacity or another. But just in my conversation with him yesterday, we're like, yeah, we need to build better community here. It can happen, and I'm just encouraged by what you're both saying here. For us, one of the things we have is an outreach service, so we have staff on hand who are connected to other resources, housing services, shelter services, pharmacies, that sort of thing, to kind of bridge, get people whatever other resources they're looking for. And like I said, we're all sort of involved in some way. Same thing with the volunteer coordinator. Just the other day, had mentioned to me a couple of years ago, one of the moms who regularly visit our food bank, her son was murdered. Teenage son was murdered at a mall here in Halifax, and it was big news here. Everyone knew, and I knew she came to our food bank quite regularly, but our volunteer coordinator speaks Arabic and was talking with her, and she of course she's still devastated. Like she's still in this turmoil. And so, I had this conversation with them about it, and right away I'm looking at, what sort of Arabic speaking grief resources are around here. So I've compiled that and sent that off to a volunteer coordinator. And they said they're also trying to get that person involved in volunteering, like building community, like that person needs community. That person needs something outside of just struggling through not only grief, but struggling through the fact that they're reliant on our food bank. Their life isn't easy for them in many other ways as well. So how do we build a sense of belonging for somebody who's facing that sort of trauma, that sort of crisis in their life? To somebody who's spending their days on the streets. We have one gentleman who's in our building every single day. He's in a shelter and has nowhere else to go during the day, so he hangs out in our cafe all day long. And we all know him. Yeah, it's just yeah. I, it's a struggle to balance the needs, but it's also a great experience when we find solutions for somebody that is beyond the band-aids of here's food for another week, or here's your daily breakfast. Like here's a home. Here's a way to here's a community service that will get you to that next level of support that will continue to build up your self-esteem, or take you out of that loneliness, um, or even if we can provide medicine for somebody who struggles deeply with mental health. We see that all the time. There's one lady who very often will come into our space, very difficult, very challenging. But in the last couple of weeks, she's been the most pleasant person, and uh, we're like, yeah, that's the provision of medicine for that person that they need. So, yeah, it is necessary. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And Jess, somewhat of a similar question to you. When participants are arriving for those conversations and express a need for other resources, how are you connecting them in the community?
Yeah, I think that's where, having a diversity of people in the room that are connected to community in different ways and know about different supports. And often, it's people living in poverty. There's other people are living in poverty and are saying, "Oh, I know that there's all of these resources here, or I'm aware that there's these programs are here, or have you applied to the dental plan?" There's lots of that resource sharing. Yeah, but I just think the theme of community building is so essential. I think that the system is broken, and the gaps are growing and the needs are increasing, and let's not forget the extreme wealth. Like wealthy are continuing to skyrocket further into that 1%. And so part of our workshops is helping people see, like, most of us are all in the other 99. Like, I think that this whole idea of acknowledging that there's difference, but also seeing, like, wow, like there's a lot to be gained from us building community and realizing that um, we are all facing similar challenges, with varying degrees of resources and varying different realities. But this sense of working together and seeing that, collective action can help us all. That's often the end of many of our workshops. People just kind of get to this point of being like, yeah, we need more collective action. Like, this is hurting us all, and we all need help, and has to change, And so that's often the sense that our workshops kind of conclude at. But again, the shared leadership factor, I can't repeat that enough, but having people in leadership that can speak to living in poverty and, are also aware of some of the resources in our local community that could be helpful for others.
Great, thank you so much. And Pam, same to you. You've touched on it a little bit with different people in the community coming together, providing rides when needed, and seeing those needs and anticipating those needs. But in terms of connecting people to resources beyond what they arrive for, how do you approach that?
Oh, well, it's tricky. So we practically, some things that we've done when we've had extra staff hours or student placements, we have created little pamphlets called Good to Know information sheets. And so if you pop in it and you're talking about, or if it's summertime, for example, we have a Good to Know information sheet on how you sign up for free programming with the city. So there's lots of great options with the city that are free. Surprisingly, people don't know this. The amount of clients I've spoken with in low-income social housing that don't know they have $300 free per child per year, including the mom, who can buy a summer pool pass for the entire family with this free money, is shocking. So in terms of connecting people to other resources, we created a bunch of the things we tend to say and the information we've gathered. And it's continually a challenge to keep updating it, but some of it's basic, and then we can keep adding to the pot. And so we have one for, how do you deal with cockroaches? How do I find a doctor? How do I connect with legal services? How do I sign up for free Spectre, free social programs? So we have these good to know sheets that connect people out to other resources. Um, really it's about having that knowledge base and linking people one-on-one. And sometimes it's about walking with them through the process because, handing people the resources is one thing. And I've had to have other mothers. So there's a mom I've supported for a while on various issues, but she has a little bit of a learning disability. And so for me to hand her the paper, and the pool literally is across the street, to say you can just walk across the street and find the office and they're going to sign you up for free swimming lessons. Totally overwhelming, wasn't going to do it. And I had time, so I'm like, I'll walk over with you. So because I could walk over with her, it gave her the confidence to just go with her, to show her where the resource is, to be that extra step, to go the extra mile with people. Beyond just handing them information, sometimes that's a critical missing link, whether I like to say, sometimes what we do is we lend our confidence to a situation. So because we have a certain set of experiences in life, we have a certain level of confidence in social interactions. And so sometimes we just need to lend that confidence to somebody else. So going with, not to talk for, not to talk, um, you know, uh, to walk alongside simply and to ask questions or to hear things differently and to feed that information back is a huge benefit as well. So I would say that's how one of the ways we connect people into greater resources. We're always looking to connect people into faith communities because then they ultimately have a circle, right? We are a circle, but we want them to have a circle beyond us. And so, many of the faith communities, for example, in the summer, the mosque has summer camps, and we have about, 15 or 18 free spots, and we connect kids into the mosque. So hopefully they can find a source of support there and relationships they'll continue to drive forward. Same thing with some of the local churches. They have free camps or low cost camps, and they'll give our kids free spaces. So, we have about sometimes in a summer 85 opportunities at day camps with local faith communities of all varieties, and we can just connect them into a broader support. And the hope and goal is that a new circle will form around the families when they join those other things. So it's not about our ministry necessarily having to connect with us all the time, but it's to say, oh, there's great things that we know of that we can actually link you to the first time or the second time, and then maybe you'll have the confidence to keep going or find a new friend that would really be a long-term benefit for your life.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. As we come to the end of our time together, I'm going to ask one more question to each of you. So you're receiving funding through the foundation grant or through mission and service. So in terms of alignment with the values and goals of your projects to the foundation, what is the alignment like, and how has support from the foundation helped you grow with your community? And we'll start with Matt, please.
Yeah, so every year we'll apply to Seeds Grant. I think there's two sources, spring and fall sessions for funding. Yeah, and what we're finding difficult for us particularly is matching what we're doing with the shared values of the grant itself. So in sometimes we feel like we're sort of shoehorning what we're trying to do in with it. Sometimes it's a question of or what we're doing, is that a representation of mission drift for us? Is it stepping outside of the core projects that we're doing, or the core services that we're offering? So as an example, the project that we talked about today, the food bundles, we were only doing that through funding. We're not doing that anymore because the funding period ended. We couldn't find another source of funding, and so we're not doing that anymore. Um, but it's okay because it felt like a little bit of mission drift for us. It was stepping outside of the core projects that we're working on immediately with those who are coming to our doors, who are looking for food support. So what we're doing now is we're providing food to kids age 1 to 5. We're providing food bundles to them through our food bank. So when a family comes through and they have young kids who are at home now, today, they can walk home with a food bundle for that child. So there is a way to sort of um, determine what works best for the organization, what works best that works with the shared values of the Seeds of Hope project, and sometimes it doesn't always align. So in that case, when we don't find a project, then we'll just pass on the opportunity.
Thanks, Matt.
Mhm.
Same to you, Jess. Can you talk about how the shared values and goals of your project and the foundation or mission and service are moving forward and how you're growing with the community?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, the funding through the United Church has really been what's sustained our very small organization since the beginning. So the partnership with our local Greenwood United Church sustained the salary for the director. And then we've applied for kind of funding from all levels of the United Church, from our region, East Region. The Seeds of Hope grant have also helped us along the way, and the mission and service definitely with staffing support. And so I think, these grants have directly helped us and, with a very lean budget, helped us sustain ourselves most definitely. And they also, help leverage us to apply for other grants because they often the other grants want to know what else you're receiving. And so they've also really helped us apply in other, to other foundations and other programs. And I think in terms of alignment with United Church and with the foundation, I would really say, helping with this desire to widen the circle and lift up the voices of people with lived experience, and really, do what can sometimes be like the long-term work of helping develop leadership skills of people with lived experience of poverty. Because, like I've mentioned, our programs, there's a participant from each program that will kind of graduate into the role of co-facilitating, and then we'll get paid as a co-facilitator. And then in that process, we'll be, trained and kind of learn about the ins and outs of nonprofits, learn about workshop facilitation, and gain a lot of skills to start resume building. Often it's people's first kind of, professional work experience. So that, if we think about breaking the long patterns of poverty, helping people develop resume skills that can help them, apply to jobs is a it can be a major change or improvement in people's lives to gain those skills. So I think those are the areas I would say that we align most greatly with the foundation. But yeah, I cannot express enough how these the support from the United Church has been what has sustained us in this work that it's growing deep roots. And so our work is kind of like the long and deep work of community building, and there's not always the kind of breadth and width of numbers that funders are seeking, where, like Pam was mentioning, it's the long-term goal of community building, and it takes a long time. And so we just are very grateful to have had support over the years in this work that's a pretty important connective tissue between all the other organizations. There's lots of other organizations out there, and they're all doing important work. And one example is a local organization we partner with that does frontline support for people experiencing homelessness and people living rough. And our workshops are another way for people that are involved in their programs that can participate in, and also people in the community that care a lot and don't know where to begin with starting the conversation or learning more. And so getting to be a bit of that connective tissue between other organizations and to provide a learning space for people that see the harms being caused by this system with increasing gaps. I think that's an important role, and I think that we appreciate all the support that we've gotten in working on that.
Thank you, Jess. And over to you, Pam, and same question.
Excellent. I'm not sure if I'm muted. Oh, I'm not muted. Excellent. Well, with Antler River watershed region, we align very, very well. Again, the chaplaincy was started by United Churches of Canada in our region. And so there is a natural and continued longevity of shared values. So social justice and outreach, camps and youth, and living into right relationships are the key priorities for that right now. And it's very closely aligned, if not identical, to our purpose and mission, and the general United Church of Canada commitment and priority of justice, leadership, and common good, again, really aligns closely with the work of the chaplaincy. So I continually stress this, that we are not a one-off agency. We are the mission. You are living the mission through your donations and through your volunteer service and your gifts in kind. And I happen to be the hands of it. So So whenever I go to churches or places, people always say, thank you for your commitment to this mission. And I'm like, thank you for your commitment to this mission, because it isn't mine, it is ours. And we are all living it out together in different ways with different roles that we have in the circumstances and time period we are at in our lives. But it is a shared mission, and we are all playing a role in it. And it is something I love to preach, but I continually preach because sometimes it's easier if it's, oh, I'm giving money to your thing because it distances me from the thing or the reality of the thing. And maybe sometimes people who receive the funding want it to be their thing. But absolutely, I like to communicate it that it's our thing and our calling in our cities and our opportunity to speak into the cities that we live in. And I just love, one thing I love about the chaplaincy is its ability to put the church and faith communities in that place where we're supposed to be strategically, practically, and visibly, and to be able to speak and have a real opportunity to bring change. I mean, it's a natural pathway, and that is a huge gift, and a huge, sometimes it's hard because I've been an outreach pastor in a church, and I was always looking for opportunities for people to serve and grow and to make a difference. And this is just such a easy, natural place where you have a frontline road to the major needs in the city where you can make a tangible difference and live out the calling that we have to be followers of Jesus as United Church people. In the very place that we exist. So I like to kind of preach all of that, preaching it at you. Thank you for letting me, and thank you for everything that you give to all the ways that the United Church of Canada leads and supports all kinds of initiatives across the country. So
Thanks so much, Pam. And with that, I am going to go ahead and start our closing words here. So I want to and cannot express enough my thanks to Jess, Matt, and Pam for sharing your insights, the challenges, the realities, your growth, and your hopeful experiences with us. We really, really appreciate your dedicated efforts and passion, and it's really wonderful to learn how your work roots your communities. And to everyone else on the call, thank you for joining us. As our panelists have mentioned, foundation grants are part of the stewardship of giving, our trusts and endowments made possible by the generosity of donors. So if you'd like to make a gift to the foundation, please visit unitedchurchfoundation.ca. And the recording is going to be distributed in our follow-up email when it's available. And farewell, everyone. Thank you again to our panelists. Thank you to everyone who joined today to spend an hour of your day with us. Take good care, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you.